Hello everyone and welcome back to Busy Pro Fast Wellness. Today I'm joined by someone who has had more health and wellness conversations than almost anyone else I can possibly think of. Casey Ruff is the host of Boundless Body Radio, where he's recorded, and I jest not, over 800 episodes with experts from every corner of nutrition, fitness and lifestyle. He's known for his thoughtful perspective on low carb and carnivore diets. But what fascinates me more is the bigger picture. And so after interviewing so many voices and experts, what lessons truly stand out? And I'm excited to explore what Casey has learnt from these conversations and how we can translate that wisdom into simple, powerful habits for busy professionals like you. So Casey, thanks for coming on the show and a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor, Alan. I'm very honored to be here.
Oh, thank you. The honor's mine, I can assure you. But before we get into the substance of the show, is there anything that I've missed, anything significant? I know there's a personal trainer element there, for example, but if you'd like to shed more light.
I've started many multi-billion-dollar companies. I've won the Stanley Cup. I won the Tour de France 7 times. Just landed on the moon. You mentioned the podcast and all the episodes we've done, and we were starting our business, and we got into a cadence of making releases every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I've kind of stuck with that. And if you do that for a few years, you end up doing several episodes, and I've been very fortunate to chat with many wonderful people around the world.
Yeah,
so not a huge accomplishment I was planning on.
I mean, it's amazing. You've only been doing this, for 4 years, but to churn out 850 odd episodes in that amount of time is exceptional. So, and I was looking, I was like, wow, there's one today, there's one 2 days later, 4 days later. What's going on? How is this possible? It's incredible.
Yeah, I love that you're starting your own podcasting journey. And I think, if you want to get information out there, you have to be very efficient with how you do things. And so I don't do a lot of editing. I don't have a lot of the social media following, and that allows me to do more of the content. So it's just kind of a trade-off. But it's a lot of fun, as you understand, to be able to chat with people all over the world. I've learned so much from some of your guests and the conversations you've created. You ask really great questions. And so it's such a fun opportunity. Podcasting is wonderful.
It is, isn't it? And the more I've done it over, especially the last few months, I've started to really glean so much myself, and I'm feeling so much better mentally, psychologically and physically as well. And it's been such a great journey for me, and more at peace. That's the main thing. So I can really relate to what you're saying. It's like this journey is helpful in every single way, not only for our listeners, but for ourselves as well. So it's has that dual side to it. Great. Absolutely. Fantastic. So obviously with over 800 episodes and all these experts, which in itself is mind-boggling, I have to say. When you step back, what themes or patterns have stood out to you as the most powerful for living a healthy and sustainable life?
That's such a great question. When I started the podcast, like you mentioned in the introduction, I wanted the topics to be quite broad, a really wide net where I could talk to people all over the world about various topics. I could talk to former professional cyclists. I could talk to hockey players. I could talk to people who were experts about foot health, people interested in psychiatry. And the theme that has kind of emerged from doing the podcast is really the importance of nutrition, proper nutrition. It's where we get the most interest, the most followers, the most questions, where we get the most subscribers on YouTube. And I guess it's the nutrition, the way it impacts lots of things. I think oftentimes, especially in the industry, we think of things like calories, we think of things like weight control, and that's all really good. And nutrition is part of that. And, counting calories or counting your macros can help you with that. But it's also the way that we eat, the way that we live, how it impacts the rest of our life. That is not just what our weight is on planet Earth, what our mass is on planet Earth. It's how we show up. What is our energy like? How do we interact with people? What is our day-to-day depression, anxiety? All that stuff changes when you change your nutrition. And so that's been probably the number one theme of something really practical that's accessible for most people, that can impact so many more things than just, somebody's weight and how much they want to weigh.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with this idea of nutrition. For me, it's one of those fundamental factors that is often neglected. And I can't believe myself from personal experience and having connections with the medical industry through pharmaceuticals, my family are very much involved in that, doctors aren't taught. They probably are. Maybe they are now more about nutrition. I think that's probably coming into their curriculums. But it's just amazing that at that root level, that it's just been neglected over those years. So I can imagine that's such a powerful one. I mean, do you have one sort of basic concept that you can share with other people? What's the sort of minimal thing that people can do in order to help them with their nutrition?
Great. That's a great question. I love it. And I would say it's funny you bring up the education about the doctors, and I always question whether that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, because they're not given much. And if they are given more, you wonder whether they're even going to be given more incorrect information and then be more firm with that incorrect information. And so it's almost interesting that they're not getting as much. And, maybe they're telling their patients to lose weight and they can't lose weight themselves. It gives them an interest to dig deeper into nutrition, and hopefully they find the right information. So that's just an aside that I wonder about. Minimally speaking, I think most people could be doing a better job of getting high quality protein in their diets. If you're asking for one simple thing that most people can do, I think that's something that people can do. Understanding that animal-based protein is far superior scientifically than plant-based protein. That is not up for debate. That's been settled for a very, very long time now. And, we live in a time when there's an anti-meat kind of sentiment around, and, understanding that, most people in the world are already eating a plant-based diet. The standard American diet is a plant-based diet already, has been for a long time. And it's clearly not working that great for a lot of people. So one simple thing that anybody could do is realize that animal proteins are very high quality. They're available to the body. They contain all the nutrients we need and nothing we don't. And if people just make that a little bit more of the focus, I think they're taking a small step in the right direction.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, I did have a chat with a mutual acquaintance of both of our, Katie Crowder, and we delved into this whole topic at great length. And that was fascinating in itself, because I learned so much from that in a previous episode of mine. But, I'm starting to sort of just shift off there. But obviously that could be difficult for some vegetarians and obviously vegans. So it's a very hard task for them to sort of make that change, psychologically. But,
yeah, I feel for them for sure, because they're doing, generally speaking, vegan, vegetarian are doing everything for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it's incorrect on all of the reasons. It's not better for human health. It's not better for the planet, and it's not better for the animals either. And it's a tough understanding, and psychologically that is very, very difficult to grasp and grapple with. So I feel for that as well. Okay.
Yeah, no, I get you. I hear you on that one. Thanks very much. And for me, it's like, obviously, we're both involved in I'm not anywhere near your level, of course, but we are involved in this sort of wellness industry, if you like, sort of from different perspectives possibly. But there's this whole thing of, there's so much noise around. There are so many gurus around at the moment, and there's so much advice in the health and wellness space that, whether it be from, the carnivore or to the keto, or from fasting to high intensity interval training, how do you personally filter out all the advice you hear and decide what's truly worth experimenting with?
It is nearly impossible, isn't it? I mean, there is a tremendous amount of noise, like you said, with influencers and social media and things we're told, things in the media. It's nearly impossible. I feel for the normal, person out there that's just trying to do the best that they can. And maybe they do hear of an unconventional type of a diet, like a ketogenic or carnivore diet, and they think, wow, like I've tried everything else, maybe I could try this. Yeah. And then they see some silly news article that says, oh, this is going to kill you of a heart attack, and it's not based on any science. And the person probably would think, oh, great, well, I knew eating cold cereal and bread in the morning was better, so I'm just going to go back to doing that. It's confusing. It's tough. I will say, generally speaking, I would want people to see who is benefiting and who is making money on advice that is being given. If I'm consulting with somebody and I'm trying to say that they need to train with me several days a week, they need to be on my particular meal plan, they need to buy my line of supplements, they need to commit for 6 months or a year, I would question that. That's financially motivated. Whereas if I'm doing a 30-minute consultation with somebody for free and I'm telling them that they need to get more protein and that's something they could try if they want, I don't make any money off of that. And generally speaking, people understand the things that work make their lives easier, not worse. It's not restrictive to have a restrictive diet that makes your life better. It makes your grocery bill a lot less. You have more time to do things you enjoy. Same with strength training. If you're constantly doing workouts all the time, you're not going to be able to have the quality of workouts to actually get you the results you need. I would make more money, Alan, if I said, hey, I need you to work with me 5 days a week and pay me for each one of those 5 days.
Yeah.
I know already that's not the most effective thing. That's going to wear you out and make you tired and eventually, crash out. But while you're training with me, I'm going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, what if I tell you actually the most effective thing is to do a really good high quality workout, and you maybe only need to do that for 30 minutes once or twice a week. I'd make less money, but you're going to get better results. And again, the point of anything in lifestyle is not to be a pain. It's not to be a hassle and make your life worse. The point of all of this is to be happier, be better, show up in your life the way that you want to, get out of pain, lose body fat, move well, play with your grandkids. Like there's so many other things. And so you mentioned an experiment, and I love that you mentioned that. When we talk in science about the different grades of studies that are done, the highest quality study that we refer to as a randomized controlled trial, where we take two groups of people, we change only one factor, keep all the other factors the same, follow those people for a very long time and see what the differences are. That's the only way that we can prove causation in science. And unfortunately, that's kind of a farce in nutrition. You're never going to get that. But the poorest study that we refer to in science is something called a case study, or an N of one, where N is just one person. So if you go out and eat more protein and you feel better, that's nice. And I like that for you, but that's not scientifically validated that because you ate protein, everything got better. But guess what? For you, that's your life. You are the N of one. That's your person. So your experiment mattered to you. And so in that way, the randomized control trials are really important, but they tell you nothing about what's going to be the best for you in your life.
Great.
And so that's the opportunity that everybody has, is exactly what you mentioned. All of us have the opportunity to be experimental, try things out. If you feel better, excellent. Keep going. Take a small step. If you don't feel better, regardless of what people say, then you can try something different. So I love that you put it that way.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for that. And also two of those key sort of points that you've just made from what you just said as well, this idea, this concept of following the money. I mean, I think we've been there before, somewhere along the line, not too far distant.
I can't remember. No idea.
So I was like, oh, it's such a simple thing to do. Who's making money from this, and who's benefiting? Yeah. And the other thing was this concept of what works for you might not work for somebody else, and it's what really works for you. That's what you should take away, because there is no one size fits all notion. And it's so important that people realize that, and not just follow, I'll follow that because this is a narrative that I'm supposed to be following at the moment. It's just, there's a lot of myths and a lot of mendacity involved in all of this, so that's for sure. I would totally agree on that one. Yeah. But if we were to go beyond this whole concept of nutrition, because stress and recovery play a huge role in performance. And what practices have you seen, either personally or from your guests, that work best for quick stress relief and that long-term resilience?
Another really great question. I love it. There's so many different practices that people can implement in their lives. If you're asking for something quick that's accessible to everybody, I mean, I just saw this tip a few days ago, but understanding that the effect that breathing has on your nervous system and slowing down your exhales in particular can really help to bring you in a more relaxed state. Yeah. Our nervous system has two kind of hemispheres, and you're more predominant in one or the other depending on what's going on. And so we call the one the fight or flight, kind of fight, flight, or freeze. It's the sympathetic system that activates when we need to be alert and awake, and we need to get ready for something happening. So That's the one side. And the other side we call the rest and digest. This is the parasympathetic side, which is the chill time. This is the relaxing time. This is the time that the body can use resources to digest food. And so the idea, neither one is bad. They're both really good. So the sympathetic is what you want to have during the daytime when you want to be up and alert. You want to be scanning the land for any predators or opportunities for hunting. It's activated a lot by the light that we have. The big blue light in the sky helps us to activate that sympathetic system.
Yeah.
But then as nighttime comes, that should kind of slow down and we should shift into the parasympathetic side so that we can relax, we can unwind, we can tell stories about our days. I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to Netflix at the end of the day so they can, have some storytelling in their life and, take that on and it helps them relax. It's a really great time to eat and digest your food properly. And it's like you said, it's not that one is worse than the other. We need them both. It's just we're more throttling in general the sympathetic side versus the parasympathetic side. So anything that can bring you down in that relaxing phase, especially in the second part of the day, can be really helpful. So, I mentioned breathing, getting blue light out. If you do choose to watch Netflix, you can wear orange tinted glasses that filter out the blue light. That can be quite helpful. Okay. Anything in general that helps you feel relaxed. I've got a sauna that I get in every single night and just spend, 15, 20 minutes in there and just reflect on my day. Some people choose meditation. Some people feel like grounding, getting their bare feet on the earth can really help. So there's lots of different ways, but I'm glad that you focus on that because we as a society, we are way more activated in the sympathetic side of things. And then we try to add so much to that with complicated workout programs and we're not recovering enough and all that stuff that you mentioned. So I think it's really important that we focus on relaxing and getting into that parasympathetic state.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes me think about the importance of keeping everything as simple as possible. I mean, a lot of what I'm trying to do with the podcast as well is to find very simple exercises that can be employed with. I think the last one I did, there was a breathing exercise as part of the movement that I inserted into the exercises. And I've covered some of the breathing stuff. And in fact, I was speaking to a guest recently, Dr. Andrew Fix of The Code, a very good podcast. And he was talking about what wonderful breathing exercise which I'd heard on Andrew Huberman, Dr. Andrew Huberman. And it was just this idea that you breathe in as much as you possibly can, and then you think you're fully, and then you take a little extra, and then you sigh out very slow, and that seems to really work, as an exercise. Yeah, it's just a little tips like that are wonderful. So I'm very much into the breath. We don't call it breath work, according to Dr. Andrew Fix. Call it breathing, not breath work, because work seems to contain that idea of it being arduous, But it's important to have that mixture of when you can get out, you can feel energized, and then also to take it down a few notches and get into that space. Dr. James Hewitt talks a lot about this as well, about this sort of recharge, reset, recharging, resetting, and it's really fascinating area to delve into. That. Yeah, I mean, great, thank you very much. I mean, you didn't sort of mention sleep there. I was surprised that you were going to say, "Oh no, sleep's a big one." Do you have a regime for sleeping? Do you have a sort of set way of doing that?
Yeah, I should have mentioned sleep. It is huge, massive. And the good part is, the setting yourself up during the daytime can help sleep kind of take care of itself. So if you're doing some of the tactics that we described earlier to get into that relaxed phase, it should help you with your sleep. And so I do have a routine. I eat at a certain time before I go to bed. A lot of people find that to be really helpful, so they're not actively digesting food right before they go to bed. Like I said, I've got my sauna I sit in at night right before I go to bed. I just feel like it's a nice way to kind of heat up my body before it naturally kind of cools down on its own. That helps give me good sleep. And I mentioned grounding earlier. Something that I've experimented with is a set of grounding sheets that is literally plugged into my outlet, not the electrical part, but the grounded part. And you can test your outlets in your house. And it's just a little thing that snaps onto the sheet. And I have to say, like, my sleep has gotten much deeper from using these grounded sheets where you're literally connected to the earth electrically, if that's the right word. Um, and yeah, it was a simple set of sheets that I decided to try, and I noticed a difference in my sleep as well. So, again, people can experiment with those kinds of
Yeah.
things, but the sleep is so important for setting you up for having a good day. And by the same time, again, the day prepares you to have a good night. And that includes, what we talked about with the sympathetic system. If people are not getting enough daylight, enough sunshine during the day, that can be really tricky, and their hormones might not respond with the same
Interesting.
strength because they didn't get the daytime light that they needed to then have the wind down hormones come in. So I
Wow.
think about it like a pendulum. So,
Yeah.
if you swing the pendulum wide one way, it should go far the other way as well. And so finding ways to get outside, get some sunshine, that kind of thing can also help with sleep quality later in the day.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, these are all great insights because I've not heard of a grounded sheet ever. And obviously the idea of not having enough sunlight during the day, that can be effective. That can negatively affect how you might reside at night. So that's really very great. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing
Of course.
these things. And it's interesting because as you've been speaking about taking the saunas and things, it's like anything. If you keep doing that little activity, that becomes a habit after time, doesn't it? And I've noticed that with my own, and I've gleaned so many things, and some things haven't really taken off, but other things that I've persisted with, even if it's been a little bit against the grain, after a while, it becomes that easy, consistent habit, something that I can easily employ on a day-to-day basis. Whereas there might have been some resistance at the beginning, but sometimes it's quite decent just to push through. Other times it's easy because you think, oh, I can do this, and it's just natural, or it might be fun. So therefore, it doesn't have that sort of side to it, which makes it really relentless and against the grain, so to speak. But
Yeah.
great,
Point.
thank you, thanks for sharing all of that. And this whole thing of the podcast as well as a wellness practice, because having done 850 odd episodes, you've spent hours each week in this deep conversation. Do you see podcasting itself as a kind of wellness practice, a way of learning, connecting, and maybe even keeping your own mental health tip top?
Yes, I've never been asked this question in this
Oh,
way, and I absolutely
yes.
love it. So I appreciate the question a lot. I haven't considered it like that, and I've started thinking about it. And yes, I absolutely agree. It's one thing to get the information, and we get, again, amazing information from people all over the world. I'm very privileged to be able to speak with them, the people that said yes to be guests, and I'm so grateful for them. And they teach me things. I, re-listen to episodes and learn things that I had forgotten. I need those constant reminders. But yeah, it does. I think podcasting itself is a wonderful way to connect with somebody, like you said. I
Yeah.
think it's a wonderful way to remember to listen. I've learned that my mute button on myself is the button I use the most on my podcast mixer. And I try to just remember that in day to day life, that like, when I'm working with clients, when I'm speaking with somebody, when, I want to have a genuine interest in that person and what their life experience is and things that they're going through, and try to be there for them. And so I think it's easy for us to get in a pattern where we're thinking about ourselves a lot. We're talking about ourselves a lot. And podcasting is a great reminder to, calm yourself down a little bit and give space for your guests. And we've created some really special emotional moments over the years, and to be, not physically present with somebody, but through a screen present with somebody as they're remembering something emotional or recounting, something important in their life. It deepens your sense of connection in a way. And there's just something magical about pushing record on a conversation. I have done it several times with friends. I know my friends, I know my dad, I know people
Yeah.
in my life, my wife, for example. And then you sit down and record something, and I learned something about that person I didn't previously know. So I don't
Wow.
exactly know what it is, but there is something magic about that I absolutely love. So yeah, again, I've never gotten that question, and I love it.
Oh, I'm so pleased. I actually found a question that you haven't had ever.
Never,
That's wonderful. And
never.
if that's the case, has there been a particular guest conversation that really lifted you personally at a time when you might have been down or you needed some sort of emotional lifting? Was there? Can you remember anything that might have helped you out from any particular guest?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember one in particular. There's, I would say I can't remember my own mental or emotional state at the time, but I remember the first time interviewing an author who was particularly influenced in my life, a large influence in my life. And I've since got to meet her and chat with her in person, and she's absolutely wonderful. But it was, the ability to talk with somebody who had literally changed my life and my career.
Wow.
And it's in the introduction, and even thinking about it, I can feel the emotion, but like even in the introduction, like getting choked up by bringing this person onto my show. Man, it's those special moments that you think like, what am I doing talking to this person? Like, I've got no business speaking with them, and they're giving me their time. And again, somebody that has completely changed my life. I can say that's a standout moment that really just got me flying high for a long time afterwards. And even to this day, like I said, can make me feel a little bit of that emotion.
Yeah, no, having listened to some of your podcasts as well, quite a few of your podcasts over the last few months, there's definitely, you have a great connection with many of the guests, and I'm learning things as well. I mean, there was one recently on the harmful parts of dye, and I'm thinking, what the heck is this? Because I was thinking about dye in the genes, etc., which apparently can be poisonous. But I learned so much from that, the dye in food and things, from that couple that you interviewed, who were friends. You'd interviewed them before, but that was fascinating to hear that podcast and on their journey and their documentary making, which was really enlightening for me to find out that. And of course, it brought us back into the whole arena of nutrition, which is not the best in certain Western countries. So I have to bring up something which came into my head now. I'm kind of got the spontaneous side, but I went to the United States in 1980 for the first time, and I was a child. I won't tell you how old I was because that would give my age away. but I was visiting my godfather, who's lived out there for since the mid-70s. And there was this advert that's always stuck in my head, and it was Frosty's Lucky Charms. And I was thinking about this advert recently because it was one of those things that is the jingle was so infectious. And it would go, Frosty's Lucky Charms, they're magically delicious. And I thought, I'll add up there, but magically pernicious. Sorry, but it was just sort of, because how could they keep on espousing the wonderful, how great these cereals are, these sugary, awfully, and I think that was alluded to as well in that particular documentary, about the difference in changing that diet for her son. Over their son, and how important that was. And then you add sugar on top of that.
Yeah, I remember doing that for sure as a kid. Yeah. No, it's so funny how catchy those commercials are. And a lot of people don't realize that as the time that smoking was starting to become more demonized, the smoking companies started buying the food companies. Yeah. And they just kept applying we call them the 5 A's of the addiction pattern, where they focus on age, younger children, they have advertising. I probably won't be able to name all 5. Okay. They make things like really accessible, but they just ran the same program that they did with cigarettes. They just did the same thing with the foods. And so we have all these really catchy things that get stuck in our mind decades later that are in a long-term memory and get released.
55 years later. Oh, no, not that long, sorry. But 45 years later, I'm remembering that,
Yeah. It's very interesting. And when they demonize fat, by the nature of having recommending a low fat diet, you had to increase the carbohydrate and sugar consumption, which is what we did. So sugar and carbohydrates and grains were just fine. Cereal was fine. Absolutely. Back then, and we see where we are today. Not in the best spot.
No, not the best spot at all. That is evident everywhere we go, for sure. You can see it. It's around us. The evidence is there. Anecdotal, or not. But yeah. Okay. Anyway, after so many episodes, obviously, with your own routines or your perspectives, I mean, have they changed? And if so, is there one habit or idea from a guest that really surprised you and has stuck with you as well?
Yeah, my opinion is always changing. I try to be open to lots of different possibilities. I try to even, find ways to bring guests on my show who I don't necessarily agree with,
Good.
and I try to get their perspective on things. And it's uncomfortable sometimes, but I do my best to give my guests space. If they disagree with me, that's fine. Um, but yeah, probably the biggest lesson I've learned with all the things we've talked about and the things I've modified in my life. For example, when I started the podcast, I was wearing, normal athletic shoes for everything I was doing. And now the only thing I wear is minimalist footwear, for example.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
one thing that I've changed. And there's several things that I've changed, but also kind of the concept that we talked about earlier has really been ingrained in my mind that like all of these practices, they could seem quite overwhelming for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And the idea that all of these things that we do should be for our benefit and not to make somebody miserable and unhappy. I've learned for myself that I am a bit of a sugar addict. If I start with having sugar in my life, I don't really stop myself. I don't contain myself. And so, I've spent the last 6.5 years on a carnivore diet where only thing I eat is meat, primarily red meat and eggs. And, to some, that would sound like a very restrictive diet. And I understand that. But to me, being restrictive on that front allows me so much freedom in other things where I don't have the sugar cravings. My mental space is so much better. I have way less anxiety. So that's one example of, something that I don't tell everybody they need to do. That's just something in my mind that helps me in my day to day. And the benefit shows up in my life. And that's the motivator to continue doing it. It's not miserable and terrible. If something's miserable and terrible, like you're just not on this earth for an unlimited amount of time. We're here for a limited amount of time, and it's shorter than most of us think. And the things you implement for lifestyle should be paying you back. And so that's kind of a thing that's really jumped out the most.
Yeah, absolutely. You say it's shorter than most people think. On that point, it's not for me. I'm constantly thinking about the finitude of life. That's in my mind all the time, and trying to, every day is precious. Try to take advantage of every day. Trying to do all the things which are going to benefit me and other people. So you're living this really rich, wholesome life, which does sound a little bit overtly pious, and I don't mean it in that way. It's just because we've got all the choices, and if we can be intentional with those choices, it's all up to us. We can choose which pathway to go down. If we want to go down a pathway which is full of toxins and bad health, then we can choose that, or not. And we can choose to live out there and choose to go for lovely hikes and be outside in nature, or be stuck inside a building, at our computer the whole time. And obviously this is part of what I'm trying to do, is be mindful of these things and give yourself a break and be self-compassionate at the same time along the way. So, no, what you've just said there is absolutely rings true in every single sense. Obviously you're a great advocate of this carnivore diet as well. But if we were to zoom out of all of that, how do you see the diet sort of fitting into that bigger picture of health, compared to movement and sleep or mindset?
Great question. Yeah, I think of them as different levers that people can pull to get a certain result. And everybody's going to be a little bit different. And I've seen people focus on their sleep first, and it improves their life in so many ways that then they're willing to do the other things, which is great. Same with working out. Some people started a workout program and that's their beginning point. And then they say, oh, wow, like if I eat certain foods during my day or before a workout or after a workout, it makes them feel one way or another. So they start to focus on nutrition. And so any of them are fine to kind of start with, but I do find in my experience that the nutrition lever is the most powerful one. That normally what I've observed is that if people can get a grasp on what works best for them nutritionally, all the other things tend to fall in place much more naturally. And an example is somebody that's got really terrible exercise and they want to live better. We might start by saying, let's see if we can get you more energy with better nutrition.
Yeah.
And let's not even worry about working out for now. We're not going to work out. Let's not do that. People think they should and they try to force it, but it's a difference between forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do versus let's give you more energy. And over time, people naturally have so much energy they want to work out. They enjoy working out. It's hard to stop them from working out. So any of those topics and things that you brought up, I think are important to address, and some will motivate people more than others. But in my opinion, the nutrition one is the one that if you start there, you can get the most wins downstream from that.
Fantastic. Really, really good. Great advice. It's making me think about when I was younger, for example. I used to drink a heck of a lot, and I would compensate with the excess amount of drinking with running. But it was really, the running was allowing me to drink ridiculous amounts of alcohol. I mean, I'm not talking hard liquor, I'm talking, beer and wine here. But nonetheless, it was still an excess amount, and it was on a daily basis. But it was like, I have to run to compensate for that. I mean, it's really not the right way around to be doing it. It might have been better to have cut down drastically on that and then being even better at the performance. I mean, I was a really kind of massively into running in the past, but it was a way of allowing me to drink more, really, if I'm honest. I wasn't at the time. Yeah. I was just like, well, I've obviously got to. Otherwise, if I don't run a lot, I'm going to get fat because of all the drinking and not particularly great nutrition either. I hasten to add, I mean, far too many carbs, far too much pasta. Which I know there'll be runners out there saying, "Oh, you need to take those carbs. You have to fuel up with those as much as possible." But
Good point.
No, what I do love about really what you've done is that you haven't, you're not constantly pushing that. You are saying, well, you can try these different things. Try, minimizing, getting down to a low amount of carbs if you need to. Mix it around, experiment. What works for you, and that's what I've found really useful in what your content has, it's churned out over the years, as opposed to sort of evangelizing. No, this is the way to do this, which is really not the best thing to do, I don't think. So great, and obviously thinking about moving forward in your Boundless Body Radio, because you've obviously built up a massive body of work. You've got a huge archive of wisdom. And so what questions or areas of health do you still feel curious about and want to explore more deeply? That's probably quite difficult to answer that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's interesting when you look back at the journey and you realize the things that you were interested in or learned about that was never the intention. They just kind of came up more naturally in your life. Yesterday I did an interview with a woman who works with pregnant women doing workouts during pregnancy. There's a lot of controversy on what kinds of workouts you can do, and she's learned that exercise is amazing for pregnant women, and anybody can do it and should do it. And again, it's a little bit controversial if you listen to mainstream advice, but talking to her, she became a doula, which is somebody who does, primarily, she basically is like a midwife where she's with the person going through the birth. Oftentimes that can be like a home birth where you're giving birth at home versus going into a hospital. Yeah. And it was a similar kind of thing when she was learning about exercise and pregnancy, how it helped her in her life. She started a business and helped women do that. Then she became certified as a doula and is in birthing situations, and that's a situation she never could imagine that she would ever do.
Right. Okay.
But it was taking advantage of the opportunities that took her to that space. And when the opportunity arose, she decided, like, yeah, I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to learn about this. I'm going to be curious and be observant. And now she is into something she never could imagine that she would be doing.
Yeah.
So I think about that similarly. There's definitely topics that I'm very, very interested in. Interactions with cholesterol in certain subsets of people has been really fascinating to dig into. There's a whole emerging field of what is called metabolic psychiatry, which is treating psychiatric disorders that can be quite heavy, such as schizophrenia, bipolar, Alzheimer's disease, your run-of-the-mill brain fog, depression, anxiety with food, and how that is transforming not just our physical health, but our mental health in measurable ways. I have people that are quite close to me that I know personally who spent decades of their lives diagnosed bipolar on many medications, basically sedated on the couch, missing all of the years of their life, that learned about this stuff and actually have reversed out of these very serious psychiatric conditions and are now off medications, are present in their lives, reestablishing relationships that ran away from them. I know many people personally who have gone through that journey. And it was through food and proper nutrition that got them there. And so, of course, that emerging field is absolutely fascinating. And, how the research is panning out as far as eating disorders and all the things that we've already mentioned. So there's definitely interest, but I'm also trying to stay as open as possible to whatever possibilities are out there that could come my way that I can take advantage of.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you've hit on a point of just remaining as curious as possible and taking advantage. And, you've had this opportunity to speak to so many experts and obviously glean so much information. And then, as you say, you might not think that would be a particularly interesting topic. From your perspective at that time, then you think, wow, this is opening up so much new information I would never have considered before. So it's always a little opening, a little door, a little shed of light, a chink somewhere along the line, which could take you off down another path, and you'll learn so much in the process, which is brilliant, of course, because you've talked a lot about nutrition and your podcast and a little bit today. But obviously, you're feeding your mind, excuse the pun, but that's what you're doing at the same time, which is also that's great, I suppose, in a sense of, well, I'd like to think, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I have no scientific background, but I'd like to think that would help with longevity in your mind, your brain, because if we're going to live into our 80s and our 90s, we want to keep our faculties, or as my neighbour's 104 across the street.
Excellent.
And she's firing on all cylinders. She's amazing, in France over here. She's constantly, she's just written a book. Well, she wrote it 2 years ago when she was 102, she published it, but she's amazing. Constantly out there, researching, and I can see her from the window here with her notes, and she's scribbling stuff down on papers and things. It's quite amazing.
I love it.
I'd like to think that kind of continual life learning can, and you're doing, obviously, you've got the perfect vehicle in which to do that. So, long may that happen, and I hope that I can jump on that sort of bandwagon and interview so many guests and find out brilliant things from them as well along the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's really good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anyway, so I think that mean in terms of everything I'd like to, we've covered such a lot, and it's been really insightful, the whole conversation. Obviously, it would be great if you could just give us a brief a way that people can get in contact with you and get to know what you're putting out there. What's the best way that they can do that?
No, of course. And yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation. Going back to the question of what people can do to bring more relaxation into their life, I think a tip that I missed is just listen to Alan's voice. Oh my goodness, you have the best, most relaxing voice. Oh, you did wonderful.
Thank you.
Of course. The best place to find us is our website. You just type in myboundlessbody.com. Okay. Everything is there. If you want to find our social media, the podcast will be there as well. Our YouTube channel is there. There's other resources such as newsletters and blogs. And there's a seminar series that I taught in my neighborhood last year that came with lessons and, different materials that people can download and meal plans to try and things like that. That's all free. We don't charge for any of that. So that's all on the website where people can find all of that stuff. They can also, the first thing that they see is a book now button, which anybody around the world can book a time to chat with me about anything related to health, fitness. If anything from this conversation piques someone's interest in something, it's just a nice way to have a good chat with anybody around the world. And they can do that. It's a complimentary thing. It will automatically sync up with your time zone. And all of that can be found on the website, which again is just myboundlessbody.com.
Brilliant. And of course, I will leave those in the show notes anyway, all the links, as many as I can possibly sort of find along the way. But I will say, just having this conversation with you, that it's so wonderful that you have this amazing humility that you would talk to so many people, from the experts, from people that have got a story to tell. And there's so much humility on your side. So I really do appreciate that. And that's a lovely characteristic to have. And I really, that's just so great to be able to chat with you for this time. So I'd like to give, a huge thank you to you, Casey, for sharing all of your wisdom along the way and for joining us on Busy Pro Fast Wellness. And I'm going to be signing off now. Unless there's anything else you would like to say along the way? Anything else?
No, this is great, Alan.
Brilliant.
Thank you so very much. It was such an honor.
Okay, thanks very much to all the listeners. And I'd like to say just to anybody who's out there, all three of you, until next time, keep experimenting, stay curious, and remember, the smallest consistent habits can lead to the biggest changes. Okay, thanks. Goodbye to everybody. Goodbye, Casey. Goodbye.